The Witcher 3, arguably the greatest game to ever be released, got a long-awaited update, bringing it to the new console generation, with the most notable change being the graphics upgrade. Alongside consoles, they also released the game for PC gamers, so maybe the original ran decently on your GPU, and you may be wondering how it will fare against the new update. Well, today I will be testing a handful of cards in the base game as well as the updated version, with the following GPUs. First up is the 550Ti, a decade-old relic of a GPU. From 2013, in so many regards a beast by size and power, the Phantom GTX 770 2GB version. Next up, the most recent of the bunch, the reliable RX 570, a budget gamer's dream GPU. And not to forget, at last, the UHD 730. Let's see if an integrated GPU can handle the new release of The Witcher 3. So with the contenders presented, let's jump straight into the benchmarks and hope all of them survive this till the end. The decade-old budget-oriented 550Ti isn't really doing well in the base version of the game, and that is with almost the lowest possible settings. In the next-gen version, it doesn't really get any better. In fact, it gets so bad that the only way to experience the story of The Witcher 3 on the 550Ti is through the original version at barely 30 FPS on average, but to be honest, it's performance you would expect from a decade-old entry-level GPU. On the UHD 730, while using the same settings as the 550Ti did, we can see very similar results, but on the iGPU, the base game ran a bit more stable than on the 550Ti. Like on the 550Ti, if you have a weak Intel UHD 730 integrated GPU, you will be better off just playing the original game, with heavily reduced settings and a pretty stable average frame rate. The GPUs so far performed somewhat like you would expect them to do, decently in the base game and quite poorly in the next-gen version. As you may have expected, the 770 has no problems running the base game with excellent frame rates and quite nice visual quality. It was just a dream to play this game on this beast back in 2015. But in the next-gen version, the dream turns into a nightmare, as the high preset is just too much for the 770 to handle. Not sure if that is a driver-related issue, since the card doesn't really receive any new drivers, or maybe it has become just too weak to handle the graphics changes in The Witcher 3. Either way, to get a decent experience, not even medium is a really good option, since it just barely gets beyond 30 FPS. Turning the settings way down will give you FPS quite similar to the high preset on the original game. If this is worth it, regarding the graphics quality, I will let you decide. Maybe you are still better off going with the original game. Like the 770, the RX 570 also has no problems running the base version at even the maximum preset, with almost 60 FPS on average. This was not a huge surprise back in 2017, when The Witcher 3 wasn't even the most demanding thing you could stress your GPU with. The RX 570 has provided the best fight out of all of the GPUs, offering decent frame rates while using the Ultra preset in the base game as well as the next-gen update. As you can notice, and it is absolutely logical to assume, the next-gen version will get you 5 to 10 FPS less depending on the area you are at, with a few more stutters along the way. Graphics-wise, you can really feel the upgraded textures and how much more modern the game actually feels. I hope you can get a feeling of it with the short side-by-side comparison I made. Another thing to be noted is the higher resource usage of the next-gen version, using around 10 gigs of RAM as opposed to the original's 7, and of course, having higher demand in the VRAM segment, approximately taking up around 500 MB more on average. But that's all something you have to expect with a graphical update such as this. This area of the game is obviously a more demanding one. The FPS of course gets better as you leave crowded areas and enter a more open field. Something I have just found out after finishing the test on the 570 is that there is a completely new setting called Ultra Plus, so here you see that running on the 570, with almost a 30 FPS average. But to be honest, this isn't really worth it, considering the FPS sacrifice. I don't believe it looks that much better while moving through the world, so you might be better off just sticking to the Ultra preset. There you have it, the first 3 cards really didn't do that well in the next-gen update. But the 570 really performed surprisingly well. Seems like you don't need much more than a mid-range 2017 GPU to experience the next-gen feeling of The Witcher 3 with decent FPS and graphics quality. Of course, not to forget, the game now has ray tracing, so for that you need a much more expensive GPU. But for a budget-oriented gamer, the RX 570, like in many games, is still a very capable card as shown today. hope you enjoyed this short performance review of the next-gen update for The Witcher 3. You might consider adding it to the GPU benchmarks, and you may consider subscribing to the channel, as many more videos will follow soon.